Hello, welcome to Bob's Dungeon. My name's Bob, I'll be your host. In this video, we're going to talk about goals. Goals in a tabletop role-playing game comes in a couple of different ways. First off, there's the goals the game master sets for the campaign he's running. Goals can be very important for a long-term campaign. And sometimes game masters think that if the goals aren't accomplished by the end of the run of the campaign's a failure. That's not true. As long as everybody has fun in the game, it's never a failure, even if they don't depose the evil king, rescue the princess, avenge their family. You know, a lot of good stories end in tragedy. But if everybody's having fun, at the end of the game, whether you accomplish the goals or not, really doesn't matter as long as everybody has fun. Then you get into character goals. These are the goals that the players give their characters when they make them up or obtain as they play. Again, they're not all that important. Right? They're very important, but they're not important as long as you're having fun with the character. And the two reasons why you should play, the two biggest reasons, is first off, the lesser reason is to escape. Because let's face it, life kind of stinks a lot of the time. So a tabletop role-playing game gives you a chance to escape for a few hours and be something that you could never possibly be in real life. And the other reason that you'd play, and I consider more important, is to have fun. Because there's so much you can do in the games and have a blast. And when you make up your character, you give them goals. Sometimes you may not have goals for your characters, and you start play with no goals, and that's perfectly okay. Later on, you might come up with some goals for your character, and you might not. If you never do, that's okay, as long as you're having fun. But sometimes I've run games in the past where the goals of the player characters have become so consuming, it's become like a main focus of the game. For instance, years ago I ran a D6 Star Wars game, and my players became obsessed with capturing an Imperial Star Destroyer and using it as their own personal ship. And they tried and tried and tried several times. Each time they failed. Because, let's face it, it's kind of difficult for a group of 5 characters to capture an Imperial Star Destroyer by themselves. So they decided, we'll go a little easier route. And they decided they'd go after an interdictory class Star Destroyer. For those of you that don't know, there's lots of different types of Star Destroyers. And most people are familiar with 2 types. And that would be the normal Star Destroyer that you see in all the movies and stuff. And the Super Star Destroyer, which is a much bigger Star Destroyer. But there's other types. One of them is called an interdictory type Star Destroyer. And what it does is it's much, much smaller than a normal Star Destroyer. And it has what's called gravity wells as weapons. And what these gravity wells do is they generate a mass gravity effect like you'd find when you come to a planet. Hyperdrives in Star Wars have a failsafe so that they drop out of hyperspace when they encounter a gravity well to kind of help them not collide with the planet. So these gravity wells on the interdictory Star Destroyers are used to keep rebels or pirates or whatever they're up against from jumping into hyperspace. They can also be used to pull ships out of hyperspace. So they're very useful. So they decided, since it's a smaller ship, it's still a Star Destroyer, and if they capture that, they'll achieve their goals. And they tried and they tried and they still failed. The closest they ever got was they came across a battle site where the Empire fought the rebellion, and they found an injured interdictory class Star Destroyer, and they're like, "This is our chance. It's wounded. We got this." So they boarded the ship, and they almost made off with it. Almost got the ship. But as they were trying to leave, another Imperial group showed up to look for Imperial survivors and saw these guys making off with their ship. So instead of letting the ship fall into enemy hands, they decided to destroy it, and they had their prize blown away around them. They escaped, of course, but they never quite captured an Imperial Star Destroyer. You could consider that a failure of a goal. It was a goal that they came up with after we started playing, but it consumed them and almost became the main focus of the game entirely. But even though they failed at their goal, everybody had fun trying, and that more than made up for failing at achieving the goal. Incidentally, years later, I ran another Star Wars game, and my brother made up this character that started off as the Zeltron smuggler, and he didn't really have any goals. He was just wanting to go out and have adventure and stuff, which is very cool. Anyway, after he played for a while, his character became a pirate. And what he did was he got himself a rather large Corellian vessel, not a capital ship of any type. It was basically just a transport, but oversized. And he got himself what's called a group of uglies, which are starfighters that are pieced together from the bits and pieces of other starfighters. So you'll have an X-Wing with TIE Fighter wings, or TIE Fighter with X-Wing wings, just ugly ships. And he had them all hyperdrive capable, so that he didn't have to carry them in his ship. And instead of coming up with a symbol for his pirating group, what he did was he chromed everything red. Everything was this red tinged chrome. The ships, his droids, their weapons, even the stolen stormtrooper armor he was wearing was chromed red. That was his symbol. So he began his pirating career, and whenever he would steal from people, he would take everything. He'd even take their ships. The people he tried really hard not to kill anybody. He put them in life pods and eject them. But he tried not to kill anybody, but he always stole their ships, and he'd chrome them red and add them to his growing armada. Eventually, he wound up in a situation where he is in a battle where the rebellion and the Empire fought, and he pulled his ships aside and let them fight it out. When the fight was over, he wound up capturing an interdictory class Star Destroyer. I didn't think he could pull it off, but he did. Where the other group failed years ago, he actually captured the Star Destroyer, badly damaged, but he got it out of there, and he paid out the nose to have it refitted, repaired, and chromed red. This was his new flagship. So, with that in mind, he started going after bigger and bigger things and building his armada. Eventually, he captured another Star Destroyer. It was a small one, not an interdictory, but a small Star Destroyer. It was Victory class, so it's small. and added that to his armada. Two Star Destroyers now, and he kept going. Eventually, he hit a shipyard. It was a private shipyard, and they were working for one of the warlords, and they had built him, where they were in the process of building a super Star Destroyer. I was like, there's no way he's doing this. And he freaking took it. I did in that game what game masters aren't supposed to do. I did everything in my power to make sure he could not take it. I put every obstacle, I threw things in, I fudged to make sure he didn't take it. The stuff that game masters aren't supposed to do. And he still took it. It was still needing a lot of work done on it. He managed to hide it and managed to take in a bunch of investors, particularly the Black Sun, and managed to have this ship finished and chromed red. He had built himself a massive fleet at this point and was becoming very feared. At this point in the game, I brought in the Yuzon Vong because it was the New Republic, and his friend that started with him, my wife's character, had joined the Jedi at this point, and she came to him and was asking him to bring his fleet to the aid of the New Republic. And he was like, "No, I've got better things I want to do." And eventually, the New Republic had to hunt him down, and there was a big battle, and we never really got to finish the whole storyline. What happened was I moved further downstate, and it was harder to get together for games, so the game kind of petered out. But he accomplished, with no goals whatsoever, what the other group, with a dead focus goal, couldn't. Goals can be important to a game, but they shouldn't be the absolute most important thing in the game. They shouldn't keep you from having fun. They shouldn't keep you away from other things you could do. Sure, go after your goals. It is important to accomplish them. But you don't need necessarily to accomplish them in order to have a good game. I think some people get lost in that they feel that if the goals aren't accomplished, the game's no good. That's not true. Have fun with your game. Accomplish your goals if you can. You're not going to get them all accomplished, but you can have a lot of fun trying, or a lot of fun failing. It works either way if you know what you're doing. But thank you for joining me for this story, and hopefully you'll join me next time where we'll talk about something else. Bye.